Hi, this is a short video on the Roman Republican government. So, after the plebeian victories, Rome always remained an aristocratic republic. So, governed by an elite class of sort of nobility, and so by the Senate majorly. But there were two magistrates running the state administration and popular assemblies, where the people could exercise their power in the election of magistrates and by voting on laws. But there was not debate. It was not possible to debate, only to vote. So, before the written constitution of the Republic, the magistracies were established when needed. But the most important thing about magistrates is that the magistracies were hierarchized, so there was a hierarchy from the lowest qualification to the highest, very much specialized, elective, so they were elected by the assemblies, collegial, so all magistracies were having at least two officers or more, and annual. So each office lasted for only 1 year, and this was in order to avoid a relapse to personal tyrannical power. So the ordinary magistrates were from the highest to the lowest, the consuls, the censors, the praetors, the aediles, the tribunes, and the quaestors. All were elected by people's assemblies. So here is a diagram where we can see the major offices and assemblies. So the consul was the highest magistrate, the head of the state. Then could be chosen a dictator called the ruler in crisis, having the same power of the consuls, but this time was a total power, only in case of emergencies for a maximum of 6 months. Then there was the highest priest, the Pontifex Maximus. Then the censors that were the guardians of public morality and had the possibility to expel people from their roles, and especially and most importantly, members of the Senate, cause of bad morality. Then the praetors that were judges, law officers, the aediles that were in charge to control the public works, and the quaestors that were the treasurers of the state. Amongst them, the assemblies, so there was the Senate, the Patrician Assembly, then the Comitia Curiata, that were especially ceremonial, so we can call it a ward assembly. Then the Comitia Centuriata, that we can call the military assembly, because according to the division in a group of 100, so centurie, the army was organized too, and they could declare war. Then the assembly of the tribes, according to the territorial tribes in which Rome and the territory was divided. A subgroup of it was the plebeian assembly, the concilium plebis. So let's see the assemblies. The Senate was composed by magistrates and ex-magistrates. They were serving for life unless expelled by the censors. Normally they met in a building called the Curia, located in the Roman Forum, but they could meet around Rome in other buildings similarly organized. You can see here some pictures of the Curia in the forum, and so a picture on top of it showing how we organized the benches of the senators and the location of the presiding magistrate. So technically, the Senate was an advisory body starting from the time of the kings, but in effect, the Senate was the chief governmental body because it controlled public finances and foreign affairs, assigned military commands, and the magistrates of the provinces, and then debated and passed decrees that would be submitted to the assemblies for final ratification. That's why the banner of the Republican government was symbolized by the letters SPQR, meaning the Senate and the people of Rome and the Roman people. So this because everything was edited and declared in the name of the Senate and the Roman people through the assemblies, and decided to. So theoretically, the assemblies were composed of all males. Women were excluded. They hadn't the right of citizenship. So all males who were full Roman citizens. The individuals had to attend in person in order to vote. There was no debate, as we said, and votes were counted in groups. So this is very important too. There were not individual votes, but the vote of each group was determined by the vote of the majority of individuals in that group. So the other assemblies were the assembly of the Curia, the oldest assembly composed by the first division in ethnic groups of Rome, that by the late Republic had mostly ceremonial and family function, clan functions. Then, very important, the assembly of the Centurie, that elected the major magistrates, consul, praetors, censors, could declare war, and served as a court of appeal for citizens sentenced to death. It was divided in 193 centuries that were, as we said, determined by wealth according to the census. And the richest centurie were also the smallest because there were few very rich people. So individual votes in this smallest centurie, that were the richest too, counted more heavily because when a majority of 193 votes was reached, voting was stopped. So some of the largest centurie rarely go to cast votes. So the middle classes or the lowest classes, financially speaking, because the smallest centurie reached the majority before, but the vote of the group counted as larger groups. Then the assembly of the tribes that elected other magistrates, voted yes or no on laws, and a subgroup of this assembly was the assembly of the people, of the plebeians, open only to plebeians. Through this, they could elect their magistrates, tribunes, and plebeian aediles. And then, after 287, the measures passed by the Concilium Plebis, so the plebiscites, the plebiscite, had the force of laws, binding the whole state. This diagram shows the ladder of political advancement during the late Republic. So the straight ladder shows the typical path of advancement, beginning with election to quaestorship, so the lowest office, and proceeding up to consulship, the highest. So very few men made it that far, and was quite exceptional that men like Cicero, who did not come from a noble family, was elected consul. The red text designate curule magistrates, the highest magistrates who had the right to sit on a special ivory folding stool called the sella curulis. So these were called the curule magistrates, and also had the right to wear the purple border toga that you can see in the magistrate to the top. Then the officers marked with an asterisk that you can see in the diagram carried the imperium, the highest political authority, which included the right to command an army, to interpret and carry out the law, and to pass judgment of death. Magistrates whose title began with pro, so proconsuls and propraetors, as you can see on the left of the diagram, were in charge of the provinces. Was the Senate normally conferring this after that men finished their term of office in Rome? So let's see the principle of structure that evolved during the conflict of orders, primarily during the 5th and 4th centuries BCE. It was formed a system of check and balances, especially realized through collegiality, at least 2 in each magistracies, so that they could balance their power, check their power. Then the limited terms of political office, usually 1 year. Then a man could be eligible for election to higher office in 2-3 years, and for the re-election in the same office in 10 years. In theory, so the Roman one was a participatory democracy, but in practice had oligarchic elements. So primarily they were governed by an elite class, and representative elements, the offices requiring popular election. The crucial role was played by the Senate, which was composed especially by ex-magistrates, and was the only permanent governing body because they served for life, and the only body where debate was possible. And the Senate controlled effectively the finances, foreign affairs, and so the state administration, so had by far the greatest social prestige. So this is very important because the historian Polybius, there was a Greek historian living in Rome in the 2nd century BCE, is providing in his book a contemporary perspective of the Roman Republic. So he's saying that the Roman Republic was balancing the most important 3 forms of government, and especially the virtues of this: the monarchy, so kingship; aristocracy, so the governed by an elite class; and democracy, the government by the people. So was balancing the virtues of these 3 forms of government in its constitutions. But we have to remember that was considered democratic by Polybius and his contemporary is rather different from modern definitions. So the democracy in ancient Rome was limited to voting in public assemblies, but most of citizens had no direct say in public affairs. For Polybius, a state with a mixed constitution would grant so a power to a single man in this case the consul, to a group of elite, the Senate, and the rest of the people through assemblies and the election of magistrates. So Polybius felt that only Rome's republic had achieved a form of this ideal. So Polybius described the mixed Roman constitution as an ideal constitution.